You got a marriage on the rocks and it's starting to suck. You got some intimacy issues and your sex life's stuck. Put yourself in the hands of Mrs. Jessica Weeks. She's got all the marriage hacks, tips, tricks, and tweaks. She's bringing truth about marriage, laying myths to rest. Taking on the hard topics no one else will address. Put your earbuds in and listen up real close. Be here every single week and make sure you take notes. For some expert advice way beyond common sense. Take your everyday marriage to a marriage of confidence.
Honey, come on. We really need to record.
I'm coming.
You're always late.
Jeez.
Let's just do this.
Shut up.
What did you say?
I didn't say anything.
This is the Confident Marriage Podcast, and I'm your host, Jessica, and Sean is here again with us today. Welcome back to another episode. This is episode 13, and if you haven't guessed yet, it's...
Toxic behaviors.
Ironically, that wasn't hard for Sean and I to fake because... we have fought like that in the past.
Who's faking?
Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at The C Marriage Show, Instagram at Confident Marriage, and like and follow us on Facebook at The Confident Marriage.
Now, if you haven't been on Facebook to check out our teaser for this episode, go ahead and do that right now. We'll stop. We'll wait for you. You can subscribe to the podcast while you're looking at the video, and then we'll get back to it.
So hopefully you paused and you're back now. You know what I think is really, really cool?
What?
There's this whole COVID thing where, not the pandemic.
Never heard of it.
Where like everybody's like doing Christmas early. And so, of course, we went down the same rabbit hole and did the same thing, and we're all ready for Christmas. But I think it's really cool to bring like joy and fun to such a sad time.
Yeah, got to confess that I put up Christmas lights 2 weeks ago and put a wreath on our truck and lights around the wreath.
Yeah, he was very excited to do that. It looks cool. I like it. Yeah.
I like it too. We'll put a picture up.
So it's Thanksgiving week, and I hope everybody is going to have a safe and fun Thanksgiving and enjoy it to the best of your ability. I know that we're just going to do a little something with just our family. We're not going to visit anybody or go anywhere, which is nice because we usually wear ourselves out with the holidays, and then we get grumpy and snappy at each other.
Yeah, bring all that toxic behavior in.
Yeah.
So I'm going to spend 4 days brining and smoking a turkey by myself.
It's going to be yummy.
It is going to be good.
Lots of leftovers.
We don't have to deal with relatives.
No.
Or in-laws. They should check out your podcast on in-laws.
Yeah.
To be ready for next Thanksgiving when we can actually see them.
In-laws making me feel like an outlaw. That was a good one.
Yes.
So this podcast, as we said, is about toxic behaviors. And they can really just rip the seams of a marriage. They are not just big and noticeable, but they can also be subtle and hard to pinpoint. If you watched our Facebook video, there are little things like when I rolled my eyes at Sean, or when he said something underneath his breath. Sometimes it's just those little things that we do that we really don't think aren't a big deal, but they're sending messages to our spouse and our children. And they also send messages to people around us who don't even know us because our body language says a lot. And a lot of toxic behaviors don't just come out from the mouth, but they also come out in our behaviors. And so we're going to touch on that as well.
Yeah, we all know about the big toxic behaviors like lying, hiding things, cheating, physical abuse, emotional abuse, but I think we need to dive into some of the smaller ones on this week's episode. They don't usually get talked about, and what happens is these little behaviors add up, and they take just as much, if not a greater toll on the marriage, because the big ones are, for lack of a better term, easy in the sense that they're easy to identify, and there's a lot written and a lot of material out there on how you can work on those. It's the little ones that get by unnoticed and that can build and build, and all of us have those little toxic behaviors that we've brought in either from previous relationship or from how we were brought up, or just personal demons that we have, personal issues that we have.
So what is a toxic behavior? Because there are things that you and your spouse could do, an argument that you could have that you can get over and you both are okay after. But what about those things that really essentially are the tiny little branches to a big tree that's a bigger problem? What about those things that cause long-term damage and hurt and pain and anger or resentment? If these kinds of things are taking place, then you know it's a toxic behavior. And all large toxic behaviors have little aspects of them. And that's essentially what we're talking about. But identifying a toxic behavior would be just something that really does put trauma or damage or hurt or anger or resentment into the relationship.
Yeah, are your behaviors hurting the other person? Is that hurt accumulating over time? Are these areas that are actually hurting you as a person or holding you back from growing? I think that plays into the definition as well.
It does. So in Sean and I's relationship, we have really had to call each other out on these little toxic behaviors, especially in the beginning of our marriage. Sean had never really been in a relationship of substance, I guess you could say.
A grown-up relationship?
Yeah. He had very superficial relationships in the past, and he was fine with that, but he never really knew what it meant to respect your spouse, your partner. And so he came into the marriage with a lot of unhealthy behaviors that really corroded our relationship, throwing his arms up in the air and sighing a lot, rolling his eyes. Sarcasm was a big one. I've talked about it on other episodes. It really, you think you're being funny and maybe your other partner gets it, but some people, they don't take to a lot of sarcasm well. And for me, it started to really erode that trust with him because I didn't, believe it or not, it sounds funny. How could sarcasm erode trust? Well, because sometimes you feel like you're just being mocked and made fun of, and that can erode trust. Sometimes you don't know what to believe. And was he being sarcastic there or was he being serious? And that causes doubt. And all that really weighs on the trust that you have with another human being. I had really toxic behaviors coming into this relationship. I'm a yeller. I have a really hard time keeping my voice down. Part of it is just that I'm a really passionate person, and so naturally my voice gets raised. But when I'm angry, it gets really, really raised. What other? I think that's all I've got. Yeah. I'm a healthy person.
Being overly arrogant is probably one of them. Thinking that you don't have any flaws is probably another one.
You're not talking about me.
You should see the look she has on her face right now. So, anyway, being an addict, I brought in a lot of unhealthy, toxic behaviors into this relationship. So, talk about yelling. I grew up in a family where yelling was the norm. I come from a family where even in good times, yelling was the preferred method of communication. So there was a lot of that at my wife, at the kids, at the animals, at myself. And it's not healthy. I've come to learn and come to see firsthand that it's a really toxic behavior because your children start to pick it up. Your spouse starts to pick it up. It creates tension in the whole house. It's really bad. And a lot of people think that it's okay to yell when you're angry, or that's just the way they communicate. And even so, it has a toxic effect that builds up over time, and it rubs off on everyone else. It's like COVID.
Yeah.
It's very contagious.
It is.
And if you don't put a mask on to muffle yourself, it sprays all over the place.
We really should not be joking about COVID.
No, it's not a joke. It's serious. And so is yelling.
Yes. Okay, so yelling is toxic. That's a give me almost. But one of the things that we really lack is the tools to stop yelling. So a couple of them is to identify your triggers. And this is really, really hard for people to do. How do you know what a trigger is for you? Well, it takes time, and it's really just paying attention to your heart rate and the intensity of your anger. So when you start feeling like your heart's racing, when you start feeling uncomfortable, uneasy, when you start getting more and more angry, you know that you have identified a trigger. And so not knowing right in the moment that that's a trigger, but knowing in the moment that you are becoming escalated is the moment that you know you need to step back. And even if you don't say it in the nicest way, just saying, I need a moment. I need to think for a minute. I need to calm down. And stepping away is one of the ways that you could really start to de-escalate the whole situation, especially your own feelings. The other spouse at times could find that irritating or feel like you're trying to dodge the situation. So reassure them that you're going to come back to it in a little while. You need time to breathe. And during that time, really get some perspective on the situation and see if you can't find where you might have been wrong, what your spouse was trying to say, what you could be doing differently, where is there a compromise for you, and take some time to just breathe. That's one of the ways that you could really stop the yelling, identifying your triggers and stepping back and really taking a deep breath and coming back to it later. So if you don't already know, yelling actually gets you less attention and gets you heard less than having a calm tone. So when you're yelling, we're typically yelling because we feel agitated, we feel annoyed, we feel frustrated, we feel like we're not being heard, we feel like they're not listening to us, we just want them to hear us, or they're not understanding us. But once you start yelling, everything you're trying to accomplish with yelling is going completely out the window. You're doing the complete opposite. The other person will shut down. They're going to start feeling attacked. They're going to start feeling angry, and you'll never accomplish anything. So again, identify your triggers, step back, take a breath, and come back to it later.
Now, another easy way to try to start to get a handle on the yelling and at least find out why it's happening is for a couple days, whenever you yell, come back and write down what the situation was that the yelling took place in. And after a couple days of, I guess, journaling all that, you can look and read through it and try to find a pattern. Oh, I see that every time X happens, I yell. Every time Y happens, I start yelling. And so then you can use what Jessica said and that in conjunction and start being able to identify not just your triggers, but what situations you seem to become a yeller in.
Exactly. Really good points. Another one I didn't think of is jealousy. Jealousy is a really toxic behavior. There's something that I struggle with.
So and I do to a big degree also, but I have the toxic behavior of wanting to shove everything down inside and not talk about it or express it in a healthy way. So I know that jealousy's affected me too. I've broke my finger punching the wall one time. Mm-hmm. Being jealous over something I probably didn't need to be feeling.
Well, I mean, and there's a healthy level amount of jealousy because everybody is going to feel jealous at some point, and that doesn't mean that you're an unhealthy person. When you're feeling jealous often, then it's a problem, right? Or how you deal with your jealousy. So,
Well, when you're feeling jealous often, you need to take a look at a couple things. You need to take a look at, is there something going on inside of me to make me feel like that? Or is my spouse really doing something that's warranting me feeling like that? And you need to really step back and take a objective view and try to take yourself out of the situation, because one of the healthy, non-toxic behaviors is to be able to look at yourself and see your part in things. And so I guess that could be another unhealthy behavior and a toxic behavior, is never being able to see your part in things. If you are saying, it's not my fault, I didn't do it, you did, if you're saying that a lot, then maybe it's time to take a look at your part in things. And a good way to do that, here, I'll give you a little homework, I'll give you a little exercise. For a couple days, whenever you and your spouse have a disagreement or an argument, only look at your part in the argument. Don't spend any time thinking about what they did. Don't spend any time thinking about what they didn't do. Only look at your part. And after a couple days, you're going to start to see that you have a part in everything, even if it's small. And that's a really healthy behavior to have.
It is. And we have a saying for that in the house. Of course, we don't say it in front of the kids, is own your shit, right? Take responsibility for the things that you do and the ways that you behave. Denial is a big part of this factor, which is a really unhealthy behavior. But I don't want to jump around too much, but essentially it's the same thing. If you're always in denial, how could you ever become a better person? And how can your spouse ever get to a place where they feel confident and happy in you? So really just owning your shit, taking responsibility for what you do, and whether you agree with it or not, stop, take a moment, and really look at it. I know sometimes it's really hard to accept that we're doing something wrong and we have flaws, especially when that's not our intention. And maybe it didn't come across as the way that we felt it. We still have to listen to our spouse and and the feedback that they're giving us, because essentially that's what relationships are about, helping one another become better people, growing each other.
You can't make any improvements on yourself until you can recognize your flaws. And an example from our personal experience is our teenage daughter. She's 15. She takes out the garbage and puts it in the big garbage cans outside. And our dog, if anything, my God, the dog will eat anything. If there's anything, even if it's like a human hair hanging out of that garbage, he will find a way to grab it and pull out whatever he can and chew it up all over the side yard. She's the only one that takes the garbages out there and the only one that puts them in the bin. And for the last 2 days in a row, there's been garbage torn up all over the side yard. So I tell her, I need you to go clean up the side yard. You left something hanging out of the garbage again, and Cooper got it and chewed it up. No, I didn't. But you're the only one who takes the garbage. It wasn't me. Well, I guess the dog magically grew thumbs and opened the garbage can and pulled something out because there's garbage everywhere. Nope, I didn't do it. It wasn't me. So I guess if you're an adult and you're in an adult relationship, don't act like a 15-year-old girl. No. Or 15-year-old boy. I'm not trying to single girls out. So once you've mastered taking responsibility, which is not something I've done completely, but once you've gotten a handle on that, that'll help you out with another toxic behavior that I'd like to talk about, and that is playing the victim. So coming from an addiction background, that's another thing that, and even my family upbringing, that was another thing that I really brought into our marriage. And that's situations where you find yourself saying a lot, you did this to me, I feel this way because you, or one of my favorite ways of playing the victim, which is pouting or skulking. You know, sitting there, poor me, oh, everybody needs to feel bad for me, oh, look at all that's happening to me. And it can come in feeling like a victim at work, feeling like a victim with the kids, feeling like a victim from the way your friends treat you or from the way people in the outside world treat you. If you're constantly feeling like a victim and you're constantly feeling like bad things are being done to you, then maybe you're just kind of sitting in it and it's not going to... So it's I guess the bigger picture and the bigger toxic behavior at work with that is manipulation.
Manipulation, yes.
So people play the victim and they may genuinely have a reason to feel bad about what's happened to them, but in doing so and in doing it outwardly and expressing it outwardly, whether subconsciously or consciously, you're trying to goad your partner into feeling sorry for you or manipulate someone into feeling sorry for you in order to change their behavior around you, which is toxic.
So one of the things that I struggled with for a really long time was understanding what it meant to be a victim, right? But I never really understood what it meant. And so Sean gave a really good example of it. But another way to be able to identify when you're being a victim is... Here's an example. When I was working in a corporation and I was consistently late to work for like a week, and I was really stressed out at home. My son was being really difficult. He would not get ready for me in the mornings to go to daycare. She was 12, 13 at the time. My daughter was fighting with me in the mornings. And it was really hard to get out the door and then drop my daughter and son off and then get on the freeway to commute for an hour to work in bumper to bumper traffic. And I didn't realize it at the time, but when my boss had confronted me about being late 4 days that week, I apologized. I said, this is happening and that's happening and this is happening and I'm feeling really stressed out and I'm really sorry. It's not going to happen anymore. That essentially is what being a victim is. When you're taking your circumstances and your situations and you're using them as excuses as to why you're doing, behaving, or saying things, or you're feeling sorry for yourself. And so essentially, if there isn't a clearer way to explain a victim, that would be it right there, is excuses.
Excuses, which my wife is always happy to remind me that, yes, you may have reasons that things happen, but they're excuses. And so one of the most powerful things that I heard and that someone told me, actually I don't remember if they told me or I read it somewhere, was, oh, this bad thing happened to me, that bad thing happened to me, oh, all this bad stuff's always happened to me. No, something bad didn't happen to you. It just happened. It just happened. It's neither good nor bad. It's just what happened to you. And it's all about what you can do to change it or how you're going to deal with it.
Exactly. So like with our daughter, she'll tell us, that she's having a really bad day. She'll have a really bad attitude with us, and she'll not want to do her chores or do her homework. And so I'll turn to her and I'll say, "What's going on with you? Why are you acting like this today?" And she'll say, "Well, my boyfriend, and then my friend on Instagram." And I look at her and I say, "Sweetheart, none of those things had to do with me. And that doesn't make it okay for you to treat your mother and your stepfather and your brother poorly, and to talk to us in such a tone and in such a way and have such a bad attitude and make everything awful here at home because you're going through things in your life. We can sit down, we can talk about it, I'll work through it with you, but you can't take it out on me and then use that as an excuse." I hope that paints a picture. Did I go too far?
No.
On the other side of being a victim, though, a lot of spouses will minimize someone's feelings or pain in a situation. And that can lead to a lot of resentment and anger and frustration, because essentially you're not really hearing or understanding your partner. You're not loving them. I've talked in my other podcast about the pair of glasses that we wear, and they're created by our own life experiences, our upbringing, situations that have happened. And while someone can go through something very, very similar, it's not going to be the same. And so everybody's pair of glasses that they see life through are completely different. And this is something that really gets in the way of relationships. And this is another way that those glasses that we wear interfere in our marriages, because while we might say, "Well, I went through something like that too, and well, it didn't feel like that to me, or it didn't do that to me, or what's wrong with you, or why would you even feel that way?" That's not healthy to do, because while you can't understand why the person feels that way in the situation, even if you've been in the exact same situation and that's not how you felt, doesn't make it invalid for the other person or minimize it. "Well, I was hurt, but not that hurt." Well, we've had that conversation in the past before, actually. There have been times where my in-laws have done something to me that really hurt me, and my parents have done things to Sean that have hurt him. And so when I explained to him, when your family member did XYZ to me, it really, really hurt. And it made me feel like I'm not welcomed. And he would say, "Well, your mom and dad for a long time did ABC to me, and I never took it there." You can't take your own experiences, even if they were worse than yours, and minimize someone.
So I know that there have been times in the past too that I've made jokes that really hurt you. And I sat there the first time and the second time it happened, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean it like that. Okay, well, I'm still really hurt. I accept your apology, but I'm still really hurt. Well, why? I didn't mean anything like that. And for the life of me, I could not understand how it could have hurt her in that way, because it wouldn't have hurt me in that way. And it was really hard for me, and took me a long time to realize and to come to the understanding that it doesn't matter how it was for me. It really hurt her, and she had every right to feel that way, whether I thought so or not. And when you minimize someone's pain, you're in essence invalidating their feelings. You're telling them that they don't have any right to feel that way, and who are we to tell another person that? You don't need to understand it, but you do need to validate their feelings. That doesn't mean that you justify everything they do, and it doesn't mean that the feelings they're feeling are appropriate for the situation, but they're still allowed to have those feelings. If something innocuous to you happens and it really hurts your spouse, whether you understand it or not, you don't have any right to tell them they can't be hurt by that.
Yeah.
You don't have to agree with them, but you have to respect the fact that it hurt them.
Right. And it's not just invalidating feelings, right? You essentially invalidate your spouse as a person. That's real. And there have been times that, talking about his joke example, where he's made jokes and he didn't understand how it hurt me so bad. And it turns out that it was actually something from my past that triggered something inside me of a memory. So I grew up in a home of a lot of physical abuse and drugs and alcohol. And one of my stepfathers, yes, one, was very verbally abusive to me. And every now and then, earlier I talked about sarcasm, every now and then Sean can say something sarcastic or joking, and it triggers something that my old stepfather used to say to me, or hit one of those feelings that he ingrained in me that made me believe something false about myself that I'm still working on. So there could be layers to this pain that you don't understand. And I know that there's been times where Sean sat down with me and said, I don't understand why you're so upset. And I would explain everything that was going on inside me in that moment and what it reminded me of and how it made me feel and what it made me think. And yes, while those are my issues I need to be working on as my husband, those are not things that he should be doing to me. He should be supporting me and raising me up.
Yeah, so you don't need to justify it in the sense of telling them, oh, you're right for feeling that way, not blah, 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 and understand how they're feeling. Ask questions. Get to the bottom of why what you did made him fit. First, let him cool down a little bit.
Yes.
Don't try to plug it out of him right away. But ask questions. Let him know you're trying to understand. Find out why it made them feel that way. And then use that as a tool to make sure you don't do the same thing and hurt them in that way, because like I said, you don't have to agree with it, but that doesn't give you the right to keep doing it to them if it hurts them that bad. You need to understand.
Exactly.
And so another toxic behavior, and I work construction, so I work around a lot of men, and most of them are married. Mm-hmm. And one thing that I've noticed there, and
it's raining men. Sorry, every time I think of
yeah, we're all out there in our short shorts and crop tops, and we just touch each other all day. Anyway.
Gross.
So,
dirty balls.
What?
I shouldn't have said that on air.
No.
But I'm going to leave it.
We're going to leave that one in. So one of the things that I've noticed is criticizing your spouse to other people. And it's done a lot of times in a joking way. Oh, my wife, God, she's such a bitch. Oh, listen to what she did. And so it's probably something that the wife is never going to hear. It's never going to get back to him. But
how much do you do that?
I don't do that because it's a toxic behavior, and I feel really strong.
Have we talked about lying yet?
I feel really yes. And I feel really strongly about this one. Because you should never criticize your spouse either to their face or behind their back to other people.
No.
So it will, whether you want it to or not, form an opinion in your mind, form a view in your mind, and you'll start to act on that subconsciously. Mm-hmm. Okay? And even if your spouse doesn't know that it's being done, it's gonna infest and invade your relationship. It's going to be there. Just like lying and hiding things, even if they're not discovered or brought to the light, it's going to worm its way into your relationship and infect it in all kinds of ways that you never saw coming. Yeah. It's a bad habit, and it doesn't. So also from my point of view, it doesn't make your spouse look bad when you're sitting there talking bad about your wife or your husband or whoever all day long. It makes you look bad.
Yeah.
Because the other people are sitting there listening to you thinking, first of all, why would you be with someone like that if they were really that bad? Second of all, why are you talking about your wife or your husband that way? Third of all, what are you saying about me when I'm not there if this is how you talk about the most important person in your life? It's terrible. It's nasty. It's really toxic.
Exactly.
But it's one of those things that's socially accepted, and it's almost like a stereotype, like, oh, God, my wife, oh, the old bag.
Yeah.
And, geez.
Yeah.
No. You should be lifting them up all the time, whether they're there or not. I firmly believe that.
I agree 100%.
That's my rant for today. Go ahead.
Well, it's like a disease, right? Often a disease can infiltrate parts of your body and you don't even know it. So a good example is...
COVID.
No, we're not doing the COVID example again. We're doing a whole new one. diabetes, right? You have diabetes, and you would never think that, I mean, I guess if you're a diabetic, you would know, but you would never think that it would affect your feet. And so one day you end up with the doctor because your foot is turning blue and you're really sick. And it turns out that the diabetes is attacking other parts of your body. Well, that's kind of how the criticizing your spouse behind their back happens, is that it starts to affect areas of your life and your relationship that you don't even really know would. So it kind of creates this idea about your spouse even subconsciously, and so you kind of act that way towards them or behave more negatively towards them. Have you ever heard the saying that what you speak and what you put in your mind is so? So it's a big word, it's a big psychological word, but it's confirmation bias. So essentially you're putting out there something that you're going to end up getting because of your attitude towards them, and you don't even realize that you're doing it. So you're creating your own circle, you're creating your own, what's the word I'm looking for, your own
Create your
destiny.
own reality.
You're creating your own reality.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy is what it is.
It is.
And so bottom line it like this. Number one, if you're saying all that bad stuff about your spouse and it's true, then why the F are you with them anyway? And on the flip side, if you're saying all that bad stuff about your spouse, God forbid that you end up at a dinner party with those people and your spouse is sitting there wondering why everybody's whispering behind their back and laughing at them. How terrible.
Yeah, that's really embarrassing and humiliating. I've been through that with my ex-husband before, and it was not pleasant at all.
Nor were most things with your ex-husband, I'm sure.
Exactly. Well, that's why I married you.
You got a whole new mess of problems with me.
Exactly. Anyways. So the last topic that I want to talk on is body language. Communication, you think of the word communication, you probably think of talking. But there's a reason why they say do not text people when you're angry or frustrated. And that's because 55% of your communication is your body language, which you can't get out in text. And they are very telling in conversation. And this was discovered and developed by a psychologist. And he wrote a book back in 1971 called Silent Messages. Maybe you want to check it out. The rule is explained like this. 7% of what you communicate is your actual spoken words. 38% of it is your tone of voice. 55% of it is your body language. So you could be sitting there and not saying a word to one another, and yet you're still picking up communication. You're still picking up cues from them. You're still being able to read them. So you know when your spouse is frustrated or angry or sad or upset without them even saying a word. When you're displaying to your spouse things through your body language, that can get really, really toxic. So rolling your eyes, not making eye contact with them when they're talking, dismissing them with hand movements, looking away, those are all very toxic communication cues that you are sending to your spouse without even opening up your mouth.
So I'll come in right there. So my wife has a very, very bad habit of getting up and walking away from me in mid-sentence, and she'll get up to do something and she's still listening. I've still got most of her attention, and she can still hear me, and she wants me to keep talking. But that act of getting up in the middle of me saying something and walking away just puts the brakes on our conversation and tells me she doesn't give a shit. Whether she does or not, that's what it tells me. And I do so many of those bad things and have done so many, and I try so hard. I've tried so hard to eliminate them. I don't even know that I'm doing them, but all those things. We run into it with our daughter once again, our wonderful daughter, and she really is a good girl and a great teenager, but she'll roll her eyes all the time when we say something, and we'll be like, you just rolled your eyes, that's really disrespectful. No, I didn't. Yeah, you rolled your eyes. No, I was just looking to the side. No, you did this. And we'll show her, and she, oh, well, that's not rolling your eyes. Yeah, it is. So again, you might not even realize that you're doing it, but being aware of your body, being aware of how you're presenting yourself to others is huge.
Right. And the other part of communication is the tone that you use. Mm-hmm. Not so much that you're talking or what you're saying, but how you're saying it, because that gives a bigger clue into how you're feeling or what you're thinking than the words. So I could sit here and say, Sean, I really, really love you. Right?
That was kind of dirty.
So
go ahead, tell me more.
While I'm telling him I love him, I'm not communicating it. I had my teeth grit. There's nonverbal. There's body language. I had my eyes squinted, and I had a tone to my voice that told him I did not mean what I was saying.
It just looked like she wanted to get down and dirty.
So that gives a really good example of how you could be saying one thing, but your body and your voice is saying something completely different. And so those are really, really important things to be aware of, because your tone and your body language can be incredibly toxic.
And so you talked about 70% body language, but I believe when you put tone and body language and what you're saying all together,
nonverbals. Mm-hmm.
So 7% is verbal, and tone and body language, the nonverbal is 93%.
Right.
So all those nonverbal things you do with your body, coupled with your tone, that's almost all. That's 93%. That's like your entire body up to your eyebrows.
Yeah. So what you're saying doesn't matter as much as your nonverbals.
Right.
And those can get really toxic really quickly.
And there you have it, toxic behaviors. That was all of them. There aren't any more. We covered every single one. We could probably do 3-part show on toxic behaviors, but we covered a few. We all know the major ones: lying, cheating, hiding things from your spouse, physical, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, manipulation and gaslighting. If anything abusive, let me be serious for a minute. If anything abusive like that is going on in your relationship, maybe it's time to get out of that relationship or seek some professional help, because those are all serious problems. But we all have these little things that we do, and we tried to cover a lot of them. And ladies and gentlemen, we're not perfect, and we don't speak on these as experts. We just speak from our personal experience, and we feel like we can speak on these toxic behaviors because we have them, like everybody does. And we speak from personal experience and things that we've overcome and things that we still struggle with. We're not preaching to you because we're perfect people.
No.
We know about these because we've had them as a part of our relationship, and we've tried to transcend them, and it's still a struggle every day.
Growing yourself and growing a marriage is a lifelong task.
Never stops.
It never stops. So we're not this perfect couple that thinks that we know it all and we've got all the answers, and so here we are telling you how to live your life. We are an imperfect couple living an imperfect life.
If you watch that video on Facebook, the teaser for this episode, that literally is our relationship some days.
Some days.
Some days.
And we just hope that the things that we've learned and experienced, we can pass on to you. So, I have something really cool to
I want to
share.
hear. Go ahead.
Okay, so we're doing a giveaway. And
I like giveaways.
I know, right? And it's a perfect time because it's the holidays and we can all use a little extra cash. But what I'm offering is $25 to Amazon or Starbucks. Or there's this really, really cool intimacy card deck set. And so this is something that I'm giving away. And there are a couple of things you have to do to try and earn points for it. But they're really simple, really, really easy. If you want to find out what they are, go to my Facebook page, The Confident Marriage Podcast. Go to my Instagram or my Twitter accounts.
Am I eligible for the contest? Or?
No.
Oh, I'm tuning out then. Go ahead.
And
I like free stuff.
Look at what you can do to earn points. It's nothing big or special. It's things like invite your friends to like the Facebook page.
Which you should be doing anyway.
Yeah.
It's a good podcast.
Sharing one of my posts on your Facebook page to get the word out. Essentially, this podcast is all about helping other people. And if for whatever reason you have a friend on one of your social medias that is having a problem and you don't even know it, and then you get our name out there, you never know. Maybe that one post or that one invite is exactly what they needed to make some changes in their life and marriage. And maybe it's not us, maybe it's not me that does it, but maybe it inspires them to seek some help, whether it's a marriage therapist or personal therapy or a program for their marriage, or find someone to talk to.
Look, we've been through some really hard times in our marriage. I know Jess will agree with me, and we found some amazing help, and a lot of it has come from people suggesting things and seeking that help, and through podcasts and through programs and other things. And we just really want other couples to get the same benefit and the same help that we got if they need it. And we just really want to get the word out there. We're not in it for any other reason. We just want to help people.
Yeah, because we used to listen to several different podcasts all the time. And though they weren't the answer to all our problems, they certainly did help a lot, and even gave us the drive and motivation to go deeper into situations and get books and more help in things that we didn't even know we had a problem with until we heard it on a podcast or someone said it to us.
And I know that we were gone for a long time through the podcast, and we took quite an extended break, so we just really appreciate everybody coming back and picking up where we left off and listening. We really, really appreciate it. And I just want to I did it before, but just for all those listeners in Ireland out there, because I know there's several listeners in Ireland, if you want us to come, do a live show from your living room and let us stay there for a couple weeks once COVID is over, we would love to take a vacation. I mean, do a live show from Ireland.
Without a doubt.
Go Ireland.
I'm part Irish.
I know.
So thank you all for joining us today. I hope that you subscribe and share the show. I hope you all have a fantastic week. Be grateful and thankful for everything you have right now, because there are so many people out there who are going to be suffering and hurting this Thanksgiving. It really is a sad, sad time for the world. Thank you for listening to the Confident Marriage Podcast. I'm your host, Jessica. We all hope you have a great week.
Take care, everybody. Thanks for listening.